Welcome back, everybody, to the Just Talk Hoops podcast. Thanks for joining me. I hope you guys have had a great week since our last episode. I'm trying to be a little more consistent with the recordings, with the uploads. So today we're going to finish out our top 100. We did 51 to 100 last week. I thought I was going to get them all in, but then I realized like halfway through, I'm not getting all the way to number one. So we only did 51 to 100. Go check that out if you haven't yet. It's on Spotify and it's on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, this is the second episode I have posted on YouTube. You can see the Stephon Marbury Timberwolves jersey, the pick for the day, because we will be talking about a few Timberwolves here as we get into our top 50. We talked about some last week as well because they're a really good team, obviously. So yeah, just 50 to 1. Remember, Just Talk Hoops on Instagram if you want to debate, talk about things, criticisms, questions, whatever it is. Hit me up on there. I'm always happy to talk basketball, or in the comments of the YouTube video. Hit me up on there, talk to me. I'll for sure respond. Title-runners.net. If you're looking to read some stuff as well, I post a lot of stuff on there, a lot of stuff that I write. Try and do one a week for that as well. Just posted one earlier this week about Mark Aguirre and why I think he's underrated, one of the most underrated scorers of the 80s. Super talented player. So we'll for sure go check that out. Run by one of my friends, one of my guys. Super cool website. A bunch of different great articles on there, not just mine. All right, so we'll get right into this top 50. There were last week we did go kind of long just because I talked about some other stuff, but we'll get right into this top 50 here. We finished it out. Number 51 was Tyler Hero, coming off All-Star season. Great scorer, just don't know that ceiling, right? So now we're going to go 50 to 1. Right at 50, I've got Chet Holmgren. Obviously just was a huge part of that Thunder championship team. Super talented player. The physical frame adds a lot to that, right? He's just super talented at 7'1" and has a solid jump shot, pretty agile for someone that size. You don't see that a whole lot. My one thing, or I've got a couple things with him why I don't have him higher yet. I think he could get there, but yet, is that offensive game just needs a little polishing. The three-point jump shot, although it's solid and it's better than big men we've seen in the past, it's nothing that to be scared of, really. It's inconsistent, I'll say that, and his creation can just be a little right? He's not incredible at creating for himself. He gets ripped a lot when he's driving to the lane. His handle's not insane, and it doesn't help that he's 7'1" or 7'2", whatever. It's easier to steal the ball when he's dribbling up here, because he's so tall. So I think that it does limit him a little bit on the offensive end of the basketball. But I think defensively, he's one of the best in the league, and he's still solid offensively. It's just, as we get into this top 50, you got to be a little more selective with your players. 49, right above him, I've got Jarrett Allen. Now, listen, should Chet be over Jarrett Allen? Maybe. You could switch these. But I just believe in Jarrett Allen, dude. I really like Jarrett Allen. This could be a biased pick here. He's one of my favorite players in the league because he was a Nets, product, right? And it's hard for me to look past that, but you look at him, you look at Chet Holmgren. I think Chet provides more on the defensive end, although Jarrett Allen's no slump on defense. He's an extremely solid defender. Rebounding-wise, I'm going Jarrett Allen. He's one of, if not I won't say the best. You got Sabonis, you got Mitchell Robinson, you got Jokic, but he's, I'd say, a top 5 rebounder in the league. He's great on the glass, especially on the offensive glass, and when you look at their offenses, yes, Chet Holmgren's jump shot is significantly better, but Allen is one of the more efficient paint scorers in the league because he's working off offensive rebounds, which he's absolutely incredible at. He's working off of lobs. He's working off of some great guards and Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell getting him the ball in spots where he can do things with it. And there's a reason that Jarrett Allen has consistently been one of the most efficient bigs in the league, is because he takes smart shots and he plays smart offensive basketball. I think Chet is still a little inconsistent. I do think Chet will jump him in this year, but I do think for now that efficiency and that rebounding just makes me want to go Jarrett Allen. And also I'm a little biased, sue me. Everyone is a little biased, right? It's hard to get away from. At 48, right above those two, I've got Brandon Ingram. Ingram's tough to rank because he's been out with injury for a long time, right? He got traded to the Raptors at the trade deadline, but we didn't see him actually get any minutes because he was injured the whole time. So it'll be interesting to see what the Raptors look like this next season because I thought Scotty Barnes had a really solid. We'll get to him as well. I thought he's had a really solid career. Last year it felt like a little bit disappointing from what I was hoping from him. But he's still an absolutely incredible basketball player, and I don't think you can look past the fact that once he gets some real scoring options near him, like Brandon Ingram, I think he could be really solid. R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quinn, they've got some guys over there, and in a weak Eastern Conference, it'll be interesting to see what the Raptors can do. And Ingram will be a part of that, right? We've seen him be a really, really solid scorer throughout his career. He was solid in New Orleans during the time he played. Unfortunately, New Orleans, the whole team has just been plagued by injuries. But I do think Ingram has provided a lot of value for in the time he has played. It's just I can't put him any higher than this because I don't know how much he really impacts winning. But we've also never seen him in a situation where he's able to impact winning a whole ton, right? Like New Orleans, he's gotten unlucky with a lot of his surrounding players being injured, including Zion, who's supposed to be the best player of that team. We'll get to him. But I think Ingram, he's obviously super talented, and I'll be really excited to see what he does in Toronto. Right above him, we've got a guy a little less flashy than Ingram, maybe a little less skilled, but impacts winning, I'd say, more. I've got Derek White. White has had a huge career surge, like a resurgence, I'd say, since coming to Boston. He was a huge part of that championship team. And he's just a really solid role player. I feel like Derek White is maybe the best he might be the highest role player on this list. We've got one guy above him who I could see still being classified as a role player. But he does things, anything that team needs, right? He's an incredible jump shooter, incredible three-point shooter, which is something that Celtics team relies a lot on, seeing as they're such a three-point reliant offense. So when you've got a guy like Derek White who can knock down threes at such a high clip, that really helps you score when your offense is so reliant on that. His defense has obviously been really solid. He's an all-defensive caliber guard. He's one of the better shot-blocking guards. I'm always impressed because it does feel like he blocks shots so well for his height. And he's a really good, he's a really good player at almost every aspect of the game. Is he a star? No. Is he all-star caliber? No, not really. But he's such a good role player that it feels like he gives just as much impact, if not more, than some of the other all-stars, if that makes sense. Right above him, we've got the other guy who I could consider a role player. It's OG Anunoby. He was huge for the Knicks this whole playoff run. One of the best two-way wings in the league. I think that if you gave OG more opportunity with the ball in his hands, I think you could get him. I think you could see his points per game skyrocket, but that's not the role he needs to play with this Knicks team. And I think that's good. I don't think that he's necessarily, supposed to be one of your leading scoring options, but he can really score. He can shoot the ball. He can do a lot of stuff on the offensive end. He's a solid athlete. And then on the defensive end, he's one of the best wing stoppers in the league. Huge for the Knicks, huge for that, that identity that they built last year. It'll be interesting to see what his role is under the new coach. I think they brought in Mike Brown, right? And Thibodeau's out. Which, honestly, I'll talk about this for a second just because about that move, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for the Knicks, but I think it is risky, right? Because I think Thibodeau's a guy who you bring in when you want to get your team to a certain level. I just think he has a ceiling, right? I think that at some point Thibodeau's going to stop being as impactful. I don't know if he's necessarily a championship coach, but he is like any team that's looking to get from being okay playing team to getting up to a higher level. I think Thibodeau's a guy who can help with that, or like a below playing and wants to get up to like a playoff team. That I think Thibodeau's a guy who can help with that because obviously he instills a great defensive identity. He pushes your players really hard. I just think that when you're in a league today where it's so like it's so very difficult to keep your players healthy. I think it's difficult to have a coach whose style kind of can hinder their health, right? When you're playing all those minutes a night, I think that players can just, their bodies get tired and they get injured. And luckily the Knicks were able to avoid that throughout a lot of this postseason. But you look at a guy like Mitchell Robinson, and yes, he's a more injury-prone player, but I think it doesn't help that he's in Thibodeau's system, which I think can make players suffer from injury. Right? We saw it last year in the playoffs. They really struggled with injury. And listen, I get that's part of the NBA today, and I'm going to talk more about that next week, I think. I've got some ideas for the episode. I'm not completely sure what I'll do yet, but I've got some ideas, some of which may be involving talking about injuries. And I just think that he's not necessarily a championship coach, but is Mike Brown a championship coach? Like, is he, he was great with Sacramento that one year. And I don't think he was the problem in Sacramento. I think they were just trying to change stuff. I didn't love them firing him, but whatever. I had an episode about that. You can go back and listen to it if you'd like. I think that he's someone who, I think he could, but it's not guaranteed. I would have rather they got a Michael Malone who's shown to be a championship winning coach, right? And I think that, especially with the East being so open, this is the Knicks' best chance to win a championship or at least go to the finals. And I think it does become difficult for them to do that if they're run with a new coach. But we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad pickup. I like Mike Brown as a coach. I think he's a talented coach. It's just difficult to say, okay, we made the conference finals, now let's see what we can do with a totally different coach. I don't know. That'll be interesting. But anyway, let's get back to the list. At 45, I've got Amen Thompson. Now, I could see Amen Thompson being a little lower at the moment, but I could see him being so much higher by the end of next year. He's one of the best athletes ever in NBA history, or in history. He's insanely fast, and he can jump like crazy. I'm hoping that doesn't, lead to him getting injured. Once again, injuries are a big part of the NBA, especially today. And hopefully him being so athletically based, doesn't ever impact his career in any way, except for good ways, obviously. But he's got so much talent. He's obviously incredible in transition because of that speed, because of that athleticism. His passing instincts are pretty good, so he can run the point guard, which is always impressive. Defensively, I mean, there's nothing to complain about defensively, right? Defensively, he's one of the best players in the league, partially because of that athleticism and partially because he's just a really good defender. Him and his brother both just great defenders. And I think he'll be huge for the Rockets next year. I think that we'll see him take a huge jump. Maybe not a huge jump because his offensive, production is going to be a little bit limited due to them bringing in Kevin Durant, right? He's not going to have to do a ton of scoring because you'll have guys like Şengün, Durant, Van Vliet who can all fill that role. But it's going to be important for him to hold down that defense. It's going to be important for him to just kind of come into his own as an offensive player and be efficient when he does have the ball. I think there are still some holes in that offensive game that he needs to patch up. That jump shot still needs some work. But he's got the tools. He's got the tools. He's got the potential. I think in a few years we could be looking at Amen Thompson as one of the best players in the league, one of the best defenders in the league, and still one of the best athletes ever. I'm super excited to see what Amen can do next year. Him and his brother, but Amen's just, I'd say, slightly better. But I don't know, maybe Asar takes a huge jump. I think Amen provides a little more on the offensive end at the moment. At 44, now I've got LaMelo Ball. Melo's, I don't like calling him Melo. I still can't do it. But LaMelo is an interesting player because when you watch just his highlights, it would seem like he's one of the best players in the league. Right? He's one of the most fun players to watch in the league. I'll give him that. My thing is, I've got a couple things about LaMelo Ball. First of all, the injuries have got to stop. And I get that he can't really control it. I'm not saying, hey, LaMelo, stop getting injured. Right? That's not fair to do because injuries are part of the game. But it is an issue when someone's super injury prone and his ankles just keep giving out, like LaMelo. So I did say last episode, I do factor in like how injury prone you are, right? If you had one injury like a Jason Tatum's been pretty much an Iron Man throughout his whole career. Hopefully he can stay that way. But he had one bad injury last year. He's going to miss a lot of time, but I'm not taking that away from him, right? I'm not saying, oh, well, he's injury prone. No, he got one injury. But LaMelo has not had one injury. LaMelo has been consistently injured throughout his whole career, and there are some guys above him who also have had those issues. We'll talk about that with them as well. But I also feel like when he plays, I don't trust LaMelo Ball to be a winning basketball player. I mean, when just his style, he takes not great shots a lot of time, and yes, some of them go, and then you've got a highlight, but it's not super efficient way to play, to do offense, right? He's obviously a great passer, but he's not to the level of Tyrese Halliburton, where I feel like he's making his teammates significantly better. It feels more like he can make a great pass, but he's not a great playmaker. Like, he's a great passer. I mean, he's a good playmaker, but he feels more like a passer than a playmaker to me, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's playing with a Hornets team that's, undermanned, right? The Tyrese Halliburton, that's not a totally fair comparison because Halliburton's playing with Siakam and Turner and Nesmith and Nembhard and all these guys who played absolutely incredibly last year, especially in the playoffs. We've never seen the Hornets in the playoffs and won't maybe for a little while here, but they don't have a ton for LaMelo to work with. And I mean, next year I'm predicting pretty much more of the same from the Hornets. And, I'll talk more about my season predictions as we get closer to the season actually starting. But it is difficult for a guy like LaMelo to really boost his value when it doesn't seem like that team's going to win. And I don't know if his brand of basketball is necessarily winning basketball. I mean, we'll see. Maybe he'll prove me wrong, and maybe the Hornets are going to be a playoff team next year. No. 43, right above LaMelo. I've got another point guard. I've got Jamal Murray. Jamal, I was a little disappointed with last year because I thought with them losing some of the offensive firepower, right, of KCP. Now, Christian Braun did a great job filling that spot, and I will sing Christian Braun's praises for a long time. But I was hoping we could get maybe finally an all-star season of Jamal Murray. We didn't get that. It felt like he took more of a step backward. Now, he did kind of shape it up, right? He did kind of figure it out, but the struggle with him is one night he'll have 27, and the next night he has 15. And it's just not super consistent, and it'll be an inefficient 15 sometimes or an inefficient 27. It's just difficult to really rely on him throughout the regular season to produce consistently. And a team like the Nuggets that's dealing with such a competitive Western Conference, if you can't have your guy be consistent, and especially since I thought Aaron Gordon was their second most consistent offensive player last year, and I thought that Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, they just didn't have a ton of efficiency, didn't have a ton of consistency, which I think hurt the Nuggets in some cases. The reason Jamal Murray is above LaMelo Ball, because I do think when they both play in the regular season, LaMelo Ball is the more talented basketball player. First of all, Jamal Murray, obviously had some injury issues earlier in his career, but since then he's kind of shaped that up. Hopefully, knock on wood, right? Wouldn't want anything bad happening to him, but if you're going into a playoff series and one team is LaMelo Ball and one team is Jamal Murray, Jamal Murray is terrifying in a playoff series. We've seen it before. We've seen it many times before. He's one of the scariest players in a playoff series. Now, I thought in this past playoff series, Aaron Gordon kind of took that mantle a little bit. I thought Aaron Gordon stepped up big time. But Jamal, we've seen it in the past, right? He fried the Lakers. He fried the whole league on their championship run. He was doing incredible. He had one of the best, translations into the playoffs I've ever seen. And playoff Jamal has been consistently a really, really good player, which I think does help on a winning team. You're looking to win, perform in the playoffs. If you're going to perform at any time, the playoffs is the time to perform. I do think that the Timberwolves did give him a lot of issues, not this past season, but the season before that, they did give him a lot of issues because that's an incredible defensive team, and they were able to throw a lot of looks at him that Jamal wasn't able to combat really well. And I mean, this year he had some games where he struggled. Once again, the Thunder, incredible defensive team. The Clippers are a good defensive team as well. They've got some great defenders. Sorry if you can hear my dog. But Jamal, one of the best playoff risers in the league. There's no debate about that. Moving on, we've got Scotty Barnes right above Jamal. Like I said, Scotty, I was a little disappointed with his production last year. I thought maybe he'd do a little more for the Raptors, but he's still a really talented player. He's a well-rounded player. I like Scotty Barnes. I like a good number of players on that Raptors team, but I don't have a ton to say. It just, there's no real weakness. I wish he'd been a little bit better last year. But there's nothing that I would be like, oh, well, he really needs to work on this if he wants to get better or to get higher on this list. I think the one thing for him would just be taking what he's got already and just building upon that, and then he could jump up a little bit. I mean, he's still very young. Right above him, he's been disappointed his whole career, but for different reasons. I've got Zion Williamson. Same problem as Melo, right? Zion he can't stay healthy, and I wish he could, because every time he's healthy, he just destroys the league. He does absolutely incredible. He's a crazy athlete, right? You want to talk about Amen Thompson as one of the greatest athletes this league has ever seen. Zion is right up there, too. You don't see many guys with that build, that size, being able to jump like he does. And I know people make a lot of jokes about him being overweight and stuff, but he's really worked on that. He can't keep up with his play style. His body can't keep up with his play style. That's why I have to drop him a good bit. If he could have one healthy season, this guy is top 20, top 15 in the league. But I can't put him there because he never is healthy. So I've got him at 41. And it's low for someone of that talent, of that caliber, but I can't convince myself to put him any higher with the injuries that he's had. Right above him, we've got De'Aaron Fox. Shout out to him just getting a bag of an extension. Good for him, get his money. I'm not sure I love that move by the Spurs. They're kind of locking in this core, but they have guards, and I don't know how long they're going to need Fox around with these guards they have. But Castle can run the two, and then it's going to be weird to see when if Dylan Harper can translate to the NBA and he can develop the way that I think most of us think he will, then what's the dynamic going to be there, right? Because are you going to start both of them? That feels weird because you've still got Castle. Or are you going to bench one of them? That also feels weird. I don't know. We could see Fox get moved in the future. But for now, obviously super talented player. Clutch, one of the most clutch players in the league. Not as high of a level last year, but that 1 year at the Kings, it just felt like every time he had the ball in the last 5 minutes, it was like, oh yeah, the Kings are going to win this game. Which you can't say the Kings are going to win this game this often, or that often, especially not recently. But, shout out to him for getting out of there. I'm kind of glad that he, left Sacramento because it's not a great situation. It's not a winning situation. And the Spurs could be a winning situation next year, Right above him, we've got Ivica Zubac. Great season last year. He jumped up a ton on my list. I think Harden was a big part of that. I think Harden, his playmaking abilities really helped Zubac kind of reach a new level offensively. But then you look at the defense, Zubac is one of the better defensive centers in the league. You look at that rebounding, he's one of the better rebounders in the league. And that's not because of Harden. That's because Zubac is a really, really talented player. I did want Christian Brown to win Most Improved Player over him last year because I did, I am sort of a Nuggets fan, right? So I did want to see that, but shout out to Zubac. By no means is that undeserved. He went from solid starting center to all-star caliber center, which that's a big jump, right? And really impressive year last year. I no problems with Zubac and his production. I think he'll be big for the Clippers next year too, who could be a really interesting team. And I don't think that he has the talent to really go much higher than this, but he's being the top 40 in the league is not an easy feat. Right above him, we've got another big man, I do find myself sort of putting them into group of being like, okay, big man, big man, big man. I don't mean to do that. It's just like kind of how my mind, like it's difficult to, I don't know. It's just kind of how my mind works. Like I'm thinking of one big man, I think of another, and I can't really decide who's higher, so I just all put them next to each other. Same thing with guards. Same thing with sometimes even players on the same team. You know, like Neesmith and Turner were really close in my 51 to 100. Once again, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But right above Zubac, I've got Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, Zubac, one of the best rebounders in the league. Jaren Jackson Jr. does not provide that. Still, though, defensively, you know, you look at the two of them, both incredible. And Jaren Jackson Jr., I'd say, is still slightly better. I'd take him defensively. Rebounding is the only thing that really, like, it's annoying to see someone who's that tall who just can't pull down a board. Like, he should be getting so many more boards than he gets. Scoring-wise, I definitely give him the edge there. I think he's been really solid offensively for the Grizzlies, especially the past couple years, with, you know, Ja missing a good bit of time due to various circumstances. And now without Desmond Bane next year, it's going to be different, right? You're going to have to look at him. You're going to have to look to him to score a little more, fill that hole. I think it was interesting the Grizzlies ran a very team-centric ball last year, right? Like, there wasn't, okay, give it to this guy, have him. Like, it wasn't as much pick and roll running. It wasn't as much isolation play. It was a lot of everybody eats offense, which I thought was fun. And I do think that kind of helped Jaren Jackson Jr. because I don't know how great he is at creating for himself. I think that it limited Ja's production a little bit, but I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr., I think he has a case to be the best player on the Grizzlies. I'm still giving it to Ja, seeing as I haven't said him yet, and he is, in fact, in the top 50. Shocker. But I think that Jaren has been great for the Grizzlies. And I do wish that we could see that. Like, I believed in that Grizzlies team a lot last year. So when they collapsed near the second half of the season, it was just it was kind of disappointing to see. I would say I hope they do better this year, but the West is just so competitive that, like, if they're in the East, I could see them doing something. But the West is just so competitive. It's going to be really hard for them to do much. Right over him, another great defender. I've got Bam Adebayo. Bam has been consistently great on defense. Now, last year, I was expecting more of an offensive jump from him. I was expecting that jump shot to look a little more refined, for him to be playing, because, you know, they didn't have Jimmy anymore. And I was expecting him to step up a little more on offense. Instead, we saw Tyler Hero doing that. But still, like, he's still a great player. He's great on the defensive end of the ball. I like it a lot when they play him and Ware next to each other. I just think that kind of maximizes Bam. I think that he's meant to be a 4, not a 5. He can play 5 perfectly well, which is why he's so valuable. He's a great switchable 5, great at defending, like, off the screen. Because of that, he can take either the big or the screen setter or the screen receiver, right? But I think that it does help him when he has another big with him, because he is somewhat undersized, at least height-wise. And I think he kind of maximizes his defensive and his offensive game when he's playing the 4 instead. So I'm hoping we see more of that next year. I thought Ware had an incredible rookie season. So I'm kind of interested in this Heat team. You know, once again, the Eastern Conference is in a weird spot, and if they can kind of get some stuff together, I could see this team being solid. But I do think they need Bam to do a little more on offense. Right above him, though, we've got Darius Garland, another guy in the East. Right, we've got a lot of Eastern Conference guys kind of fitting in here. Garland was huge for the Cavs, obviously. They were one of the best teams in the league last year, one of the best regular season teams we've seen in a long, long time. He's super, super talented offensive point guard. Listen, on defense, he doesn't provide a whole lot, obviously. You know, like, he's an undersized guard. It's difficult to provide a whole lot on defense. Luckily for him, you know, he's got Jared Allen, Evan Mobley sitting back there in the paint. They can kind of save his mistakes. But offensively, he's an incredible playmaker and a really solid scorer as well. I think that we saw him, like, he was just a huge part of a winning team, right? You can't get mad at that. I know that there have been some rumors about the Cavs, whatever, like moving around some pieces. But I thought he did great last year. I thought that, you know, Kenny Atkinson coming in really helped them. And we'll talk more about Kenny Atkinson when we get to Evan Mobley. because I think that he was super impactful in his development. But Garland, one of the better point guards in the league. I think 36 is a pretty good spot for him. Like, I wouldn't put him higher than this or lower than this, really. Right above him, another guy I was kind of disappointed with. Like, this is kind of the time, not Garland. I was disappointed in Garland, but Bam I was a little disappointed in. Zion has been disappointing. Scotty I was a little disappointed. LaMelo, I was like, this kind of timelines or this kind of group has been guys that I expected a little more of, which may be influencing where I put them just because I'm like a little lower. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. But I've got Jaylen Brown. I thought Jaylen Brown would step up a little more last year, especially, he's coming off of Finals MVP, and then to see him almost take a step back was a little disappointing. We know he's a super talented basketball player, and we're going to see a lot more of him next year because Tatum's going to be out, so he's going to be expected to run that offense, right? So it's going to be him, Simons, White running that offense. Celtics are in a weird spot, and it's going to be tricky for them, but we could, I think a big thing that they're going to be watching is, well, is Jaylen Brown going to step up and fill this role, or are we as a team going to struggle because he's not capable of doing that? And right now, I'm on the fence. Right, I do think he'll average more points a game than he did last year just because of more opportunity, more shots, but it might be less efficient, and it might be, I don't know if they're going to win a whole lot of games with Jaylen Brown as their number one option. Definitely not as much as Tatum. They're going to miss Tatum, both on the offensive and defensive end of the ball. We'll talk more about that when we get to Tatum. But I do think Jaylen Brown is going to have to really show more growth, Right above him, we've got a guy I was pretty impressed with his production. It's Julius Randle. I thought he was big for the Timberwolves, and I thought that trade at the beginning of the year last year when that trade happened, I was confused. Why the Timberwolves just went to the Western Conference Finals. Why would you trade away your second best player, Karl Anthony Towns, for a guy in Julius Randle who is not a bad player? You got Dante DiVincenzo is there as well, which that's a good pickup as well. But Julius Randle hasn't shown to be like, oh yeah, I would say that Cat's a better player than Julius Randle, and if you just, even if you don't think that, if you just went to the Western Conference Finals, why would you not keep your team pretty much the same? You know what I'm saying? It seems kind of ridiculous to me that you would change your team that much. It's not like, oh, well, we brought in more bench depth. It's like, no, we traded away our second best player. But Randle, he delivered. He delivered really well. And the Timberwolves were back in the Western Conference Finals, and the Knicks were in the East. So it was a win-win trade, actually. And he played great. I thought he had some games where he stepped up really well. And he's just, I don't have a lot to say about Julius Randle besides, I was impressed with his production despite me thinking that he was maybe going to be, a slight downgrade from Cat. I think, honestly, that Timberwolves team looked, I don't know whether, which one I would take in a 7-game series between those two Timberwolves teams. I don't know. But I do think they looked really good. I'll give them that. I might take the 2024 team with Cat just because we saw them beat better teams. You know what I mean? Beating the Nuggets is more impressive to me than beating the Lakers, who don't have a starting quality center, or even a rotational center at all. And beating the Warriors without Stephen Curry for most of the series. I think we saw that 2024 team beat better teams. So we just know they can perform against. It's a different conversation. I'm just throwing that out there. Right above Randle, I've got Jimmy. Speaking of the Warriors, actually, Jimmy. Listen, I'm not as high on Jimmy as a lot of other people are right now. I just don't see him being. I don't think he's the same player that he was just a couple years ago. Obviously, he's getting older. Makes sense. I'm not holding that against him. He's getting older. It's naturally happening. But I think people are kind of holding on to a playoff Jimmy that isn't as present anymore. I think that offensive game has declined. Now, he's still a good off-ball scorer, but he's just lost some of his pop, some of his punch. Defensively, he's getting older, so that's hurt him a little bit. Now he's still a very well-rounded player, right? He can still pass very well and play make very well for a wing. He's still a solid scorer. He's still really good off ball, and I've still got him. He's 33rd in the league. That's nothing to scoff at, right? That's something that's extremely impressive. You shouldn't be mad about being almost top 30 in the league. I just think I see a lot of people still putting him top 25, and I just don't see him being at that level anymore. I think every one of the top 25 is someone who I would feel fine with them being my best player on my team, for the most part. And I wouldn't want Jimmy as the best player on my team. I'd want him second or third. I'd rather have him third. He's still talented. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like I'm hating on Jimmy. I don't mean to. I like Jimmy Butler, but I'm wearing a Timberwolves jersey as I say this. I'm not a Timberwolves fan, right? I'm not, but I think it is difficult for me to put him higher when I can't see him being the best player on a solid team. Second best, sure, the Warriors are solid, but I also don't know what the Warriors' ceiling is next year, or their floor. We'll talk more about that in the future, but I don't think Jimmy really fits that team's, or I guess he fits their window. I just don't know what that window is. I'm a little scared about that Warriors' future if I'm a Warriors fan. Right above Jimmy, we've got a guy who I think significantly better for the future. Unfortunately, he and his whole team struggle with injuries. I've got Tyrese Maxey. I really like Tyrese Maxey as a guy. He just seems like a really happy, joyful guy, and I'm not a Sixers fan at all. But I do feel I do feel like, I kind of like this guy. He's fun. He seems to enjoy basketball. He seems to enjoy his job, which I always love to see. And he's also a really talented player. I don't know exactly what stats he put up last year. And I know I don't talk a ton about stats when I'm just doing these lists because I'm doing it all off the top of my head. I'm doing it just what I think of the player. So I'm not giving you a ton of numbers. If you want numbers, go check out title-runners.net because there I actually put out numbers and statistics and analysis and stuff. This is really just me spewing. Gross. Just me talking about this stuff. But I think Maxey's really good. I wish we could see him be healthy. I wish we could see that Sixers team be healthy because I actually think if they were healthy, they could be really good. We'll talk more about the big fella in a bit. But Maxey, he's great. I really like Tyrese Maxey. I really like him. Right above him, we've got Ja Morant. At the start of last year, or for the first half of last year, when he played, I was disappointed, which is why I was saying, hey, Jaren Jackson Jr. might be the best player on that team. But then I feel like he kind of stepped it up in that last stretch. He kind of shows, okay, yeah, he's still got this. He's still the best offensive player on that team for sure. I think he's still one of the more impactful players. I do struggle with where to put him. Obviously, he's so fun to watch. I like that he said he wasn't going to dunk, and then next game, he's doing his old antics. Well, not all the old antics. He's got other stuff that he shouldn't be doing anymore. But he's just a really talented basketball player, and it's difficult to find a spot where to put him, but I don't think this is a bad spot. I do wish we could see a healthy season of him. I think I'm going to have to start docking him for injuries next season if he can't stay healthy. But for now, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm putting him here just because I do think the talent is there. I don't know. It's a difficult spot. Right above him, so now we're getting into the top 30. These are the 30 best basketball players in the NBA, and thus the world. Don't debate that, anybody. These are the 30 best basketball players in the world. Unless Cooper Flagg comes in and he's I'm kidding, but it's not gonna be Cooper Flagg. It's gonna be Yegor Dioman. My goat. So 30. Top 30 players in the world. I've got Alperen Şengün at 30. I'm not as high on Şengün as a lot of other people are, but I can't deny the talent that he does bring, right? He's a good playmaking center. He's a good rebounding center. He's a good offensive center. Defensively, you could take it or leave it. He's not. I think he improved last year. I thought his defense looked better than it did the year before, and subsequent years before that. And he was an all-star caliber player, which I'll give him top 30 for that. And he was the best player on a top 2 seed in the West. That's not easy to do, so I give him that. It is difficult for me to look past some of that defense, and I don't think he's quite as impactful on offense as the guys above him. But he's a great basketball player, and he's really good for the Rockets, and I think that it'll be interesting to see what he can do now bringing in KD. No more Jalen Green, but bringing in KD, bringing in a lot of role players like Dorian Finney-Smith, guys that can help on offense or on defense and offense. Dorian Finney-Smith, he can catch and shoot fine. And I do think Şengün was maximized playing next to Steven Adams. I love that double big lineup. The rebounding was just insane when they played both of them together. So it would be interesting to see, like in the future, obviously not right now, but in the future to see him with a really talented big man next to him, or maybe a talented defensive big man. Like that would be really interesting to see. Jared Allen in the future. I'm not saying right now. Right now, the Rockets, I think, have got a really good team, and they shouldn't really change it up much anymore. They already changed a bunch, but right above Şengün, sadly got injured at end of the playoffs last year, or not the end of the playoffs. They got out in the first round, but I got Dame. It's sad to see him go down. Like that was sad, and then the Bucks just waived him, which was weird. And now they've got to pay him, what is it, $25.5 million a year. Now, I don't hate that they got rid of him if you're the Bucks. I don't hate it. But then they got rid of him just to sign Miles Turner for a ton of money. And they still have to pay Dame for 5 years. And it's like, I mean, I get you don't want him sitting there taking up money, but he's still going to be taking up money, and he's not going to be there at all. And now he's going to be in Portland. So back to Portland, which I think is awesome. And I love to see him go back, Unfortunately, that probably means he's never getting that ring, but, it's Dame. He's provided high-level basketball for years now. I thought last year he really improved upon his first year with Portland. Or with Milwaukee, sorry. I thought he looked a lot better last year, but then he did struggle with injuries, which I wish we could see some. I wish we could turn injuries off, man. Injuries are terrible, and like I said, maybe next week we'll talk a little bit about how I would fix that. Maybe, just maybe. Right above Dame, we've got another guy who got injured. See, this is what I mean by my brain is just like, well, one injured guy, let's add another. I've got Kyrie. Same thing, just went down, unfortunately. And, I mean, Kyrie is an extremely talented basketball player. We know this. He's one of the most skilled players of all time. He's still providing that much value. He's still one of the more efficient scorers in the league, despite the fact that he is 6'2". He's absolutely incredible. Now, listen. I need to give my thoughts on the Chris Paul, Kyrie Irving debate, and I might do more on that next week too. I'll get some more all-time debates and stuff in there. Right now, obviously, it's Kyrie. Stop putting Kyrie and Chris Paul in the same tier on all-time debates. Stop it. Stop it. It's Chris Paul. Stop. Please. They're not interchangeable. No. Chris Paul is a better basketball player. Easily. Now, no disrespect to Kyrie. I like Kyrie Irving. He's fun to watch. He's one of the most fun to watch ever. And he is currently 28th in the league, at least according to me. Chris Paul is not in the top 100 because he's like 700 years old. But I just, I saw Kyrie's name on the list. I was like, okay, I gotta give him some thoughts on that. I might talk in the future more in depth because that was obviously just like me going off on a tiny tangent. But I'll talk a little more about that in the future. I think that could be fun. Hopefully Kyrie comes back and that Mavs team could maybe do something. I don't know. West is too competitive for them. Right above Kyrie, we've got Franz Wagner. Franz. I'm not as high on Franz as some people. I think I'm also higher on Franz than some people. I think there's kind of two schools of thought about Franz Wagner, and I think I'm in the middle. Good defensive player. Solid offensive player. I wish that three-point jump shot was just a little better. That's all I wish. It's difficult, especially when a team struggles with the three-point shot, like the Magic do. I wish it was just a little better. But, Franz is great. Franz is a really good basketball player. I say that a lot because these guys are all really good basketball players. But like that's kind of just my way of saying like, yeah, he has these issues, but despite that, like, he's a top 30 player in the NBA and an all-star caliber player and really good. And the Magic could be scary next year. I'm just saying. Right above Franz, I've got Sabonis. Now, Sabonis, unfortunately, is stuck in basketball purgatory, not Washington, Sacramento. But one of the best rebounders in the league. Really solid offensive center. He can make really well. Now, same thing as Şengün. He doesn't provide a ton on the defensive end, but I do think he rebounds and scores at a higher level than Şengün, which is why I have him higher. Now, people might say he contributes to winning less, but he's on Sacramento. And, I mean, the first year he was in Sacramento, I believe it was the first year, they went to their first playoff series in a long time. Like, he's a helpful player for winning, but the Kings just suck. And they're in the Western Conference. You can't compete if you're in the Western Conference, unless you're the Thunder, or the Rockets or the Nuggets, or the other teams, but whatever. Not the Kings. If you're not the Kings, you can compete. Right above Sabonis, we've got Franz's running mate. We've got Paolo. I do think that Paolo and Franz are close in terms of talent currently. I think Paolo might take a little bit more of a jump next year, and we could see him being better than Franz. But for now, I think he is better because I have him higher on the list. But we could see him being significantly better than Franz, at least noticeably. That's a better word. Not significant, but noticeably better. Once again, I do wish that three-point shot was a little better. I do wish he got to the rim a little more because sometimes he's settling for some Carmelo Anthony shots when I'm like, dude, be Braun. Get to the rim, please. But he does it occasionally. When he does, it's like, okay, yeah. That's what I want to see. Like I said, Magic are going to be interesting. Now, we talked about Tyrese Maxey earlier. Let's talk about Joel Embiid. Man, it's tough to rank Joel Embiid. It is really, really tough to rank Joel Embiid. Now, he's such a good basketball player when he's healthy, and especially just a few years ago. He's such a good player. But I cannot logically put him in the top 20 when he plays so little. He's played less than 50% of games in his career. And I hate it. And, that I think that article that came out about him talking about that injury and the stuff he struggled with, I'm really rooting for him. And the Sixers pushing him to medical retirement, I don't think he's quite there yet. I think he's getting there. But, man, even when he plays, he's just such a good... Even still, when he plays, he's such a good player, and I really hope he can come back. I really hope so. Now, do I want him to be with the Sixers? Not necessarily, but you know what? I'm rooting for Joel Embiid next year. I don't like Joel Embiid. I never have. Ever since he elbowed Jared Allen in the face in 2019, I've held a grudge. I can hold a grudge. But I cannot, I just can't bring myself to root against the guy this year. So I'm rooting for Joel Embiid to maybe go to the conference finals. Just make it past the second round. And, have a good season, be healthy-ish, make it past the second round, and then he can retire. Or not, hopefully he doesn't. But, it's going to suck if people, fans in the future, are looking back and saying, man, this Embiid guy, he just wasn't healthy at all. He's going to be one of those what-ifs. It's like, but you don't understand how good, you have no idea how good Joel Embiid was. It hurts. It hurts. But I can't put him higher. I can't justify putting him higher with those injury issues. That damn knee, it's turned to dust. Right above him, we've got Evan Mobley. Mobley was great last year. Great defender. And Kenny Atkinson, I think, unlocked that offensive potential. I think he was a big part of that. I thought that we saw finally that jump in Mobley's offensive game that we were looking for a long time. And still that defense, he won Defensive Player of the Year. Is Wemby a better defender? Yeah, but Wemby got injured. Mobley didn't. Kudos to Mobley. Big reason that the Cavs were such a great defensive team and great team overall. And I just thought he was really impressive. I think we could see maybe another jump from him. It'll be interesting to see what the Cavs do. Will they reach that level in the regular season again, or will it be a little lower? I don't know. Right above Mobley, we've got another guy who struggles with injuries. It's Kawhi Leonard. The reason that I'm giving the benefit to Kawhi over Embiid, even though I do think in the regular season when they both play, Embiid is better, is because we've seen Kawhi perform really well in the playoffs when he's healthy, right? When he comes back from injury, he performs really well in the playoffs. Embiid, we haven't seen that, so I just think when you can put a guy on a team and if he's playing in the playoffs, like he was cooking the Nuggets in the first round. He was really good. He was cooking them. And I just think that gives him a slight benefit for me. If he hadn't played in the playoffs last year, I'd give this to Embiid. But just the fact that he shows up in playoff time and he shows up, like, I've got to give it to him. Right above him, we've got his running mate, James Harden. Harden, also not known for showing up in the playoffs, but has been really good throughout his career. Like I said, I think he's a big part of Zubac's development. He's a big part of that Clippers team being a great team like they were. And he's just a great basketball player, great offensive player. He's not at the level he was when he's averaging 40, but he's still really good, and I think his playmaking is underrated, but I think people are finally starting to see that part of his game more. He can pass so well. Defensively, don't think about it. Right above him, we got another guy who I don't want to think about his defense. It's Karl-Anthony Towns. Offensively, he's one of the best bigs in the league. And if you just looked at his offense, you'd be like, man, Cat is great. And then you watch him defend the rim, and you're like, what the hell? he can't play defense. But they went to the conference finals last year with him as the second best player. And that's 2 years in a row with two different teams. The team he's on has gone to the conference finals. Because having a big who can shoot like that and who can score like that is a valuable thing. It's a very valuable thing. And Karl-Anthony Towns deserves his kudos for that. And I know people were like clowning him for saying he's the best shooting big man of all time, best shooting center of all time. Besides Dirk, who is it? I've never seen a big man shoot the three ball like Cat does. Besides Dirk. And like Dirk gets that mid-range, that better mid-range shooter, but just 3-point? I'm just saying. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is a great case for that. Now, if you look at defense, and he's not the player Dirk was. Don't get it twisted. But defensively, he just leaves a lot to be desired. Him and Harden. See, this is what I mean. I think in like pairs. Right above Cat, we've got Cade. He was huge for the Pistons last year. I'm really hoping this Pistons team does well next year because I'm kind of rooting for him. Super fun. I think Cade, he does provide defensive value, and he provides two-way value, and he's a great playmaker. I could see, I think him and Harden is a debate, but I just think the fact that Cade can be the best player on a team that does solidly in the playoffs, especially considering it was their first playoff series for most of those guys, I think that's a very, very valuable thing. And so I give Cade the slight edge there. I also think he's a better defender. He's, at this point in his career, is a slightly better scorer than Harden is. Passing I'd give to Harden, but I think that's still a debate there. Right above Cade, we've got another guy who playoff production helped him a lot. It's Jalen Williams, J-Dub. He was great in the finals. He's a great defender. He's a great scorer as well. I thought that we finally saw him be able to unleash that scoring ability in the playoffs last year and in the postseason. And I mean, he's a huge part of why the Thunder are the best team in the NBA and are going to be the best team in the NBA next year. And shout out to him for getting extended. Right? He was one of the extensions they made. I think he was. Ahead of him, I'm going to try and finish this up here in these last 10-ish minutes. I've got Trae Young, another guy, offensive point guard, just runs an offense really well. Now, I could see you saying Cade over Trae. I'm still giving it to Trae right now. I think that Cade could jump him this next year. I'm just slightly leaning Trae Young. Great passer. I just think that passing is at such a high level. And then scoring-wise, he's obviously incredible at that. Great shooter as well. I'm really excited to see what the Hawks can do next year as well, bringing in Porzingis, bringing in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I felt like there was another guy who I'm just blanking on right now. There definitely is. I'm not sure why I'm just blanking. But if I randomly thinking of it. But also, they're just going to be healthier. I mean, they brought in Asenge, right, their rookie. No, that was the Bulls. Who did the Hawks take? Why can I not remember who the Hawks? Because they traded their pick, right? They got that guy. Was Sorber? Did Sorber go to the Hawks? I can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember. The draft was long enough ago that my memory is just blanking. But I think we'll finally see Trae Young with a better supporting cast than he's been with for the past few years. They might finally not be a 500 team. They might be better. Don't jump. I'm trying not to jump the gun, but I believe. 16 right above him, another finals guy, Pascal Siakam. He was great in the finals. He has been great in the playoffs consistently. He's just a really good basketball player. I'm saying it again. I don't even know what to tell you. Like that damn spin move, it works. And he was huge in the finals. And you know what? I'll tell you 15 as well. It's Tyrese Halliburton. So we got both of them. I do think Halliburton's the better player, but I think without either of them, that team looks nowhere near as good. Obviously, but I just think the two of them provide different value to the team, but they provide similar levels, right? So Halliburton, he's the better playmaker. He's big for getting those players around him to be better. But Siakam is better in terms of I think Siakam's a better scorer, especially, we saw him torching the Knicks, right? And, Karl Anthony Towns being on defense was a big part of that, and Siakam just performed really well in that series. And then he performed solidly in the Thunder series as well. Big reason that went to 7. They almost won. Shout out to Pascal. Shout out to Tyrese Halliburton as well, who, like I said, he's at 15. That playmaking is just incredible. Get well soon. Just terrible to see him go down like that. I don't want to talk about that again. Like I said, I'll probably do something about injuries next week, which is going to be a somber episode. Right above Tyrese Halliburton, now here's where it gets extremely difficult because the top 14 is so difficult to make because I think 14 to 6 all could be mismatched, whichever way you want. But at 14, I've got Donovan Mitchell right now. I thought that individually he had a slightly worse year last year than he has had in the past, but team-wise, obviously the Cavs are absolutely insane. Donovan Mitchell is still a really good player, great athlete, great scorer overall. And listen, he could go up all the way to like 8 in this list, and I wouldn't be mad. Right above him, we've got his other shooting guard. They've been in debates for years. It's Devin Booker. Book, unfortunately, is stuck with a Suns team that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. It's very different production for Booker and Donovan Mitchell. Mitchell provide a little less individual value than Booker, but more team value. And, I think that I'm still giving the edge to Booker because we are talking players, not teams here. And I think that if you put Booker on that Cavs team, they would be just as good, maybe even better. I don't think that it was the fact that I don't think Book doesn't contribute to winning. He just didn't last year because that Suns team doesn't contribute to winning. I wish he could get out of there, dude. I want him gone. I want him out of the Suns just because I want him to have a chance to win something ever. Because they can't. They gave him like 3 years of good teams, and then just after that haven't given him anything. Before that, obviously didn't give him anything. Right above Booker, this is the lowest this guy's ever been. I've got LeBron James outside of the top 10. That seems insane to say, doesn't it? But he is older, right? That defensive value, we've seen that drop a little bit. He is getting older, and he is becoming less impactful. It's something that happens. Now, is he still, the fact that he's still a top 12 player in the league at 40 is insane. But I think that you can't put him that much higher than this because he doesn't provide that much more value right now than the guys over him. He doesn't right now. But he'll get there. He'll get there. Or not he'll get there, but he's still, I don't know why I said he'll get there. I was looking at someone else on the list, and I was skipping ahead to the next guy. But he was there, obviously. LeBron was the best player in the league, and I think he's the best player of all time. Sorry, Jordan fans. Sorry to my uncle, if you're listening. But he's just getting older. It happens. Right above him at 11, this is the guy that I was talking about when I was saying he gets there. I was just looking at, I've been talking for an hour straight. It's Victor Wembanyama. Wembanyama will be top 10 next year. The thing is, he did get injured last year, and I don't know if that's going to be something that consistently happens. His offense does still need a tiny bit of work. He could still get a little more efficient. Sometimes it does get frustrating when he's pulling up for three, and I'm like, dude, you're 7'4". If you don't go slam that on someone's head right now, what the hell am I going to do? He's 7'4". But I do have him at 11 right now. He could easily jump into that top 10, especially because we have some older guys over him. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. Hopefully, those Buddhist monks he was hanging with taught him how to avoid blood clots. Deep vein thrombosis was what it was, right? Yeah, I don't want to think about that. At 10, I've got Kevin Durant. He's Kevin Durant. You know who he is. He's still one of the best scorers in the league. I love Kevin Durant. One of my favorite players of all time. Maybe my favorite player of all time. I miss watching him with the Nets. But we got Cam Thomas, the new Kevin Durant. If we could re-sign him, that would be great. But KD still provides a ton of value as a scorer, both on and off ball. The efficiency has gone down a little bit. The defense has gone down a little bit. I'm fine with you putting Wembanyama over him. But it's still Kevin Durant. It's still Kevin Durant. He's still one of the best players in the league. It's that simple. At 9, I have Stephen Curry. The lowest that guy's been to, probably. Obviously still the best shooter in the league. Anthony Edwards, sorry, not quite there. He is getting older, though, right? It's the same thing. But Steph, I could easily see him being higher. Right now, I have him at 9. Maybe I'm just not high on him. I don't know. I mean, how can you not be high on Steph? But maybe I'm just underrating him. I don't believe in the Warriors, and Steph just doesn't move me as much as he did in the past. But he's still the best shooter in the league. He's still the best shooter of all time. He's still an incredibly gifted offensive player. He's still incredible off the ball. It's Steph Curry. Being in the top 10, if you're in the top 10, congratulations. You're great at basketball. If you're in the top 100, right above Steph, though, I do have Anthony Edwards. Like I said, I'm not a Timberwolves fan. Did they say they're bringing these back? Or no, it's the purple ones, right? They're bringing some jersey back. They're bringing back a jersey that I'm excited for. Anyway, I got to get done with this episode. Ant, great two-way player, one of the best in the league, great athlete. Do I have problems with his tendency to struggle with the double teams? Yeah. Do I have problems with his tendencies? I have some problems with Anthony Edwards, but most of them are not. He's still really good, and he's shown that he can perform in the playoffs, and he's shown that he can beat the best players in the league in the playoffs. And he's I can't even lie. He's a really good basketball player. I'm not the hugest Ant fan, but he's ridiculously good. He's ridiculously good, and I think we could see him jump up a little bit next year. Right above him, I've got Jalen Brunson. His spot got boosted a ton because of the playoffs, and it might just be recency bias. But I have not seen many players who take over in the clutch as well as Jalen Brunson does. He's still undersized, which does hurt his abilities as a defensive player, and as an offensive player a little bit. But he's still just such a good player, especially when it comes down to crunch time. And if you make the Western Conference Finals or the Eastern Conference Finals, you get a boost. Congratulations, Anthony Edwards. Congratulations, Jalen Brunson. At 6, I've got a guy who people are not going to be happy with. I've got Anthony Davis. I don't care what people say. Anthony Davis is so good at basketball, and he's such a great defender still and a great offensive player. Should he have been traded for Luka Doncic? No, because the Mavs shouldn't have traded Luka Doncic at all. But in terms of players you can get back, Anthony Davis is not a bad option. I know that he did get injured last year. I know people will say, well, but Anthony Davis. He's actually been extremely healthy over the last few years, besides last year struggling with that one injury. But he's been consistently pretty healthy. I just think people underrate him. I honestly do. I think he's one of the most underrated players today. All right, top 5. Top 5, I think, should be fairly consensus in terms of who it is. 5 is Tatum. I think everyone should have Tatum at 5 because I don't think he's better than the players over him, but I don't think he's worse than the players below him. I think you should have him at 5. Hopefully he comes back from injury. He provides a ton of value as a passer, as a defender, as a scorer. Right above him, I've got Luka Doncic. I think Luka could jump this. Just last year he was a little bit disappointing. I think Luka versus Shea is an interesting debate, but I've got Shea at 3 just because we saw Shea have an incredible year last year. I can't put the MVP, Finals MVP, All-NBA player, one of the best guard, no, the best guard in the league. I can't put him any lower than 3. And if you want to have that Luka Shea debate, fine. Hit me up, Just Talk Hoops on Instagram, or say it in the comments of this YouTube video. Either way. But we can have that debate. But I've got Shea for the moment. Also, he provides a lot more on defense. At 2, I've got Giannis, one of the most dominant players in the league, one of the most dominant players we've ever seen. Crazy. Like, it's the Greek Freak. I feel like I don't need to talk as much about these top 5 because people know what their value is. Like, people know why they're here. You know, like, Giannis is here because he's Giannis. Because he's unstoppable. He's unstoppable. No one can stop Giannis. And if the Bucks could get out of the first round, that'd be great. But it's not Giannis' fault. And then the best player in the world, it's Nikola Jokic. He is the best player in the world. There shouldn't be any debate that he's the best player in the world. He's one of the best offensive players we've ever seen. He's a top 15 player of all time. Can we say that? I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. But I think the Nuggets are going to look really scary next year. I think that the supporting cast got significantly better than it was. And I think Jokic is still the best player in the world. So that's the top 100 players in the NBA. A lot of talking. I get that. I get these are pretty long episodes. Hopefully it was still interesting for you guys to hear my takes on all these players. I tried to get through it quick enough, but still, provide some room for analysis. So hope you guys enjoyed. Next week, like I said, we might talk about some injuries, might talk about some ways to fix stuff. And then, at some point we'll get around to my season prediction, stuff like that. But hope you guys enjoyed. I appreciate anyone who's stuck around this whole time, even if you watched a little bit, I appreciate that. If you just want to hear the top 10, I appreciate that. But yeah, that's my top 50. I hope you guys have a great week. I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.